With this photograph, we are going to further deepen and broaden our experience with how we can create this vintage effect where we add these interesting deep and rich tones and a little bit of that sepia toning and a bit of texture. And you can think of this movie as just a chance to again explore how we can use this particular technique in order to change our overall photograph. Well, in this portrait, I like the strength of it, and I like the overall motif and the different style that we have here in regards to the garment and the old paddle and the hat. And what I want to do is I want to convert this to black and white, add some really deep and rich tones, and then add a bit of texture. So first let's start off by clicking on our black and white adjustment layer icon. The nice thing about this adjustment is that what we can do is we can modify the brightness value of a few areas. I'm just going to go ahead and bring up the brightness here, or bring it down just until it looks good. Now this image doesn't have a lot of contrast and it's not very bright. And that's just fine at this point because we'll be adding a bit more in a few moments. Alright, well the next step is going to be to add a color balance layer. Here we'll choose color balance. What I want to do is simply bring in some reds, a little bit of yellows there, go to my shadows. I want to deepen those up significantly. And as I do that, I'm going to keep in mind that this layer eventually is going to that blending mode of soft light. So before I get too carried away, I'm going to change that blending mode and then go and continue to work with these adjustments so that I can dial in just the right color for this photograph. Alright, well I'm liking that. Here's that before and after, but there's just too much red in the image. We could of course modify these sliders to change the red value, or just as easily, click on your adjustment layer icon, choose hue saturation, go to the reds, and then simply desaturate. And there we have a much more muted, a little bit more of a brown tone. Take a look. There's that before and after. Another great way to work with color is to use curves. Here we'll click on our adjustment layer icon, choose curves, go to that blue-yellow channel. We can add a little bit of yellow in there. Go to the red channel, add some red into the mix. Go to that green-magenta channel, add some magenta here. And then go to the RGB composite. Darken up our contrast, brighten up our highlights, and see how this in turn will affect our image. Now here at this juncture, I'm not liking the reds. I've already mentioned I don't want to have too much red in the photograph, so I'll go back and I'll modify these controls until I get it to just the right spot where I have this little nice hue shift here, a little bit of that golden aesthetic. Next, lower the opacity and find just the right spot for that. Already we're starting to build up the depth with this photograph. Here's that before and then after, and just lower the opacity a bit more. One of the things that we're discovering here is that in order to create effects like this, we need to experiment. Alright, well let's zoom out. What I want to do next is deal with the brightness value and also darken up the corners and add some texture. And if we notice, this area is just too bright, so I want to darken that. And then I want to redirect the way the viewer looks at the image, work on my corners and texture. And let's go ahead and do that in the next movie.